Context is key when it comes to theology, and since we're delving into church history, it will be good to look at some of the factions and groups that were around at the time of Jesus and his apostles. So, without further ado, let's have a look at the who's who of Judea in the 1st century. Starting off, the Romans. They conquered themselves an empire, including the kingdoms of Israel and Judah, renaming the new province Judea, installing pro-Roman rulers. As a conquering empire, the sentiment towards them, and those that work for them, such as tax collectors, was quite a negative one. I won't dwell too much on these guys, but knowing that Judea was an occupied territory explains the motivations of some Jews who weren't very happy that God's chosen people were being governed by horrible polytheists. So, first Jewish faction, the Pharisees. Pharisees feature a lot in the Bible story. They were a religious faction in Jewish society who believed in the resurrection of the dead. Trying to distance themselves from the worldly, they were also sticklers for religious rules, of which there were a lot. They often get a bad reputation in Sunday school and church preaching, but they're actually very popular amongst the common folk. Many Pharisees converted to Christianity, including a certain Paul of Tarsus, the most influential Pharisee convert. These guys were staunch defenders of Jewish ways, rejecting a lot of the Greek and Roman culture making its way into Judea, and did not get on very well with the next group on our list. Also big players in Jesus' day were the Sadducees. Now they were the rivals of the Pharisees, and they were another powerful religious faction notable for having a very different view on the resurrection of the dead. There wasn't one. Also, unlike the Pharisees, they denied the more supernatural, stating that angels and the like didn't exist. Unlike the Pharisees, Sadducees mostly held sway in positions of power and the upper echelons of society, having a say in the running of the temple and performing a lot of the rituals, such as sacrifices. They were fond of new ideas and wanted to integrate Roman and Greek culture into Jewish culture, and had close ties with Roman authorities, also helping to run various bits of society under their rule. Next up, the Zealots. Now, if you've ever watched Monty Python's Life of Brian, you'll recognise the Zealots. They were the inspiration for the People's Front of Judea. Or was it the Judean People's Front? In any case, they were activists who were very outspoken about their distaste for Roman rule and wanted them out, so the Jews could rule themselves again, encouraging their fellow countrymen to rebel. Jesus had one of these chaps as a follower, the appropriately named Simon the Zealot. Next up, we have the Essenes. Now, the Essenes are barely mentioned in scripture, but they would probably have liked it that way. Like the Pharisees, they wanted to get away from worldly things, but took it to a bit more of an extreme level. They wore simple clothes, lived in caves in the desert in a monastic lifestyle. It's commonly thought among scholarly circles that John the Baptist was an Essene. He seems to fit the profile of one, especially since baptism was part of their repertoire. They often lived in communities in the desert, and it's believed that the Dead Sea Scrolls, a set of ancient well-preserved documents discovered in the 1970s, were put there by the Essenes. Finally, wandering preachers. Going back to Monty Python, a throwaway line from John Cleese. He is the Messiah, I should know, I've followed a few. Although Life of Brian caught a lot of flack in its day, it has to be said they got a lot of the history bang on. Jesus wasn't the only wandering preacher on the block, and, as Gamaliel had noted in his speech to the Sanhedrin, he seemed to be another one of these harmless ones whose following would just fizzle out as soon as they had. The rest, of course, is history. So there we have it, folks. I just wanted a short, quick-fire video to give you a bit more context when you're reading through the Gospels and Acts, since the books themselves assume you know all these people, but don't give you any context whatsoever. Like, subscribe, grab a drink, keep asking questions, and I'll see you all in the next episode.